You're listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Happy New Year, Leafs fans. This is episode 17 of the Leafsnation Radio podcast. Caroline, Scott, Kyle, and Michael's back in the house. What's up, everybody? How has 2022 been treating you?
Oh, it's been good. Very relaxing, stressful time, especially with the recent Ford announcement about more restrictions. So that's great for mental health, but otherwise feeling good.
Yeah, what's going on in Ontario?
Oh boy.
Fill me in. I'm in Alberta. Fill me in.
It's like a daily what's going on in Ontario at this point.
Yeah.
So are you guys back to like extreme restrictions? Like what are the restrictions?
I think it was something like level 2 restrictions. So pretty much like we're going back to March of 2020. Great.
Wow. So the beginning of COVID.
More or less. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like it's whatever you're experiencing in Alberta right now, pretty much what's going on here.
Wow. Well, you know what, guys?
Fun times.
Sending you a hug through the screen. Stay healthy. And again, mental health is most important, right? Do what you guys got to do to like reset and recharge. It's the most important thing right now. Kyle, 2022?
Yeah, it's been good so far. I got an article out on day one there on January 1st. So started things off with a nice little bang there. But obviously it's unfortunate we don't have the World Juniors and stuff that normally would be going on for New Year's and stuff like that, but making do with what we got so far. And a Leafs win on the first day of the year doesn't hurt either.
Awesome. We'll get into that in just a second. Scott, what's going on, my friend?
It's been pretty good as well. As much as I always love doing my year-end music lists, it's also pretty stressful to get them all together. I was going very down to the wire. Like I was arranging my songs list the day before I was supposed to release the article. And then I didn't even release it the day I was supposed to anyway. It basically just came down to like, either I finish it or I sleep. And the only person pushing that deadline was me. So I didn't really see the point in doing that. But yeah, no. So that's aside from that, also I finally got to release my first intense breakdown of the other team finally, because the game didn't get canceled. So that was nice to see hours of work finally get to be published. So yeah, it's been pretty good so far. 1,
always choose sleep. Always. It's the best thing for you. 2, sorry, is this going to be before every single game where you do a preview of the opposition?
We'll see. Depends on how much work it is, because if it's exhausted, I might only do the big matchups.
Like, maybe is Wednesday against the Oilers a big matchup?
Oh, like I'm definitely doing one for that because I have 4 days time to prepare for it. But yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Kyle, you spoke to this. World Juniors have been canceled. No surprise to me because this has been an ongoing conversation in sports for a couple of years. The NHL had a break in their schedule because of COVID protocol. In my opinion, the World Juniors, the women's U18 tournament from the get should have just been postponed, hopefully play at a later date, maybe in the summer. Are we surprised? What are our thoughts on this? Does it come down to COVID or does it come down to the dollar signs for the IIHF and Hockey Canada?
This kind of felt inevitable, didn't it? Like the whole fact that like 2 weeks before the tournament started, everybody was coming over, and then Omicron really started getting going here in North America and things like that. And it just felt like with how rushed things were to try and get protocols into place, more extensive ones, and then having hotels still kind of open and things like that, it just felt like this was bound to kind of shut down at some point. So at least we got a couple of games there, but as soon as the first case happened and the first game had to be forfeit, you kind of saw where things were going. And sure enough, the next day, a couple more games are canceled and the tournament's done. So it's unfortunate because at least on the Leafs side of things, there was 3 pretty notable prospects that were all in their last year of eligibility at this tournament. Hopefully we'll get to see the tournament rescheduled for the summer or something like that, so they can all go out and finish their World Junior careers. But yeah, we talked about it a lot with the women's U18 tournament there last week, where we want to see it postponed. We want to see it happen in the summer. Hopefully the same thing happens for both tournaments here. They're able to get them in the summer or something like that, because it would really be unfortunate to see this group of players not be able to kind of play out their international dreams here.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Scott. I don't know if you were about to say something.
Yeah. So like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't the reason why like an outbreak started to happen amongst the players was because there was a wedding at the hotel that some of the players were staying at, and they got it from that?
In Red Deer, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't really prove that that's where they got it from, but it's not exactly the greatest sign that things were really locked down.
Yeah. Like,
I was in my kitchen when I heard that on TV, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh wow.
I got that from a Raptors podcast. Like that's how
Yeah.
bad it is.
Yeah.
When you're hearing about,
Oh,
that's how
boy.
badly it's run when that like kind of news is crossing sports.
Yeah.
And then you
but yeah,
hear-
no,
I was going to say, and then you hear reports about the Russian team on their way back from Russia having to stay back because a lot of the players were not following COVID protocols on the plane. And I think they were smoking on the plane too.
Russian team gets kicked off once a decade, so they were just filling that quota.
Well, absolutely. It was inevitable. I mean, again, I just think from the get, this should have been postponed, but here we are. If there is a silver lining for us here on TLN Radio, it's that we got a quick sneak peek at the Leafs prospects. Kyle, you spoke to this at these World Juniors in a couple of games. What at this point right now, seeing the performance of these Leafs prospects, what do Leafs fans have to look forward to in these young players?
Yeah, well, in Topi Niemela and Roni Hirvonen and Matthew Nice, the three prospects that were at the World Juniors, they make up probably 3 of the top 5 prospects the Leafs have right now. So for Matthew Nice, it was cool to see him get to score his first international goal for the United States and do so against kind of his home country there in Slovakia, with how many roots his family has to that country. There will be a couple of games that you might be able to see of his over the course of the rest of the year, with TSN having some collegiate games. He plays at the University of Minnesota, so you still might be able to catch him a little bit. But Niemela and Hirvonen are heading back overseas. Niemela just actually signed a 1-year extension with his Finnish league team, so he'll likely be playing there next season, but we'll probably at the end of this year see both him and Hirvonen probably play a couple of games with the Marlies when their Finnish league season is over. But it would have been nice to see them over the entire tournament and really get to know them and things like that. We saw Niemela and Hirvonen at last year's tournament as well, but Topi Niemela picked up a goal. Hirvonen had a nice goal in the pre-tournament game, but ultimately wasn't meant to be for right now. Hopefully we get to see it in the summer. The Women's World Championships are already scheduled for the end of August, with them deciding to do the Women's World Championships in Olympic years, unlike they haven't done in the past. So there's already an IIHF tournament scheduled for the summer. So hopefully we can see them kind of bundle up some tournaments in July and August or something like that, because I know a lot of Leafs fans, myself included, would like to see the World Juniors in general, but especially see these 3 players get another opportunity to kind of show themselves to Leafs fans before they eventually play with the Marlies and hopefully the Leafs.
Absolutely. All right.
I will say one, I don't want to say upside to all of this, because it's kind of mean that like these players are getting robbed of this opportunity, but I'm definitely not going to miss random people and media members overrating prospects because they had a good World Junior tournament. We don't need another Max Domi
because of 2 games of Shane Wright. You already know it.
Yeah, probably, but it's better than like the Max Domi for Phil Kessel rumors that were plaguing Leafs land in 2015.
Good times.
Good times.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys.
Remember those days.
Let's quickly let's move on to obviously NHL. The Leafs, the last game that they played prior to their game against the Sens was on December. Where do I have it? December 14th. Against the Oilers. They won 5-1. So it was a big game for the Leafs. And then Saturday, January 1st, to kick off 2022. Happy New Year's, Leafs fans. There was a big game against the Sens. And yes, should the Leafs have beat the Sens? They're basically at the bottom of the Atlantic with the Habs. Absolutely. But it was a solid freaking performance from Toronto that had Leafs fans across the board very happy, and NHL media talking about their performance, which is, always a good sign in Leafs lands. Let's start with like our highlights, maybe with Jack Campbell. He got the shutout as he should against the Sens, but 24 games, 15 wins. This stat came from Nick Barden on Twitter, .939 save percentage. This guy's got to be a candidate for the Vezina at this point, especially if he keeps numbers like this up for the rest of the season.
Going to be hard to try and convince him to get a bit of a discount if he continues to play this way, because he's going to be a hot commodity on the open market. And it's been a blast to see him blossom into this legitimate starter that he was projected to be back in 2010 when he was I think was 10th or 11th overall in the draft. And considering all the stuff that he's been through for the past decade and plus, it's been awesome to see. I really hope he can stay because he loves it here. The team loves him. I'm sure management and the coaching staff loves him. But with these impressive numbers, if he keeps this up, and let's just say maybe does something else in the playoffs, wink, wink, it'll be a lot trickier to keep him in the fold.
Well, yeah. Can the Leafs afford him? What has to be done for the Leafs to get him? What does Dubas have to do?
It'll definitely be one of the most interesting contracts to watch as far as what it will look like, because everything that he's done this season and last season shows that he's probably worth a lot of money. But the fact that it's really only been this season and last season, means, maybe we don't see too many people trying to take a long-term chance on him. So does he make $6 or $7 million for 8 years, or does he make $5 million for 2 years and a bit more of a show me deal, but still making the money, more money than what he's making now? Goalie contracts are always weird in general. And I think we're starting to see more and more with contracts like Carey Price's, investing long-term in a goalie, unless it's Andre Vasilevsky, isn't always the best idea. So I think we'll have to see where that goes as far as the value. I don't know how the Leafs would fit that into their cap situation unless they give up on Mrazek after a year.
Do you think that that's a possibility though? Because that's what Leafs fans are saying online right now. Get rid of Mrazek and give Campbell a good contract.
I mean, right now, yeah, because we haven't really seen anything from Mrazek, which not to his fault. He's been injured.
Yes.
How much he can control there. But I think you'd be pretty insane at this point if everything continues the way or let's say COVID gets really bad, season ends right now, no playoffs. They have to sign contracts based on what they've had so far. It'd be pretty crazy to be okay, we're going to stick with Mrazek going from here. Campbell, nice to have you around. Campbell, nice to have you around, but see ya. We're going with Mrazek from this point on.
The difficult thing with Campbell there is that he's so fresh in terms of how little games he's played and kind of how recent he's kind of developed into this star player. But he's already 29 years old. He's turning 30 later this week. And so what kind of contract does he get with that? Does he get a long-term commitment at a high dollar? Does he get a shorter term deal, but also gets that higher dollar total? Or is it something in the middle? So there's not a lot of comparables for him in the past. When you look at some guys that are maybe a little bit older or come out of nowhere that have had a couple of good seasons, you look at Chris Driedger right now with Seattle, who's having a really rough season. Scott Darling in years past, those ones haven't worked out. But if it's somebody that's staying in the same market that's had the success there, whereas those guys have moved on and then had their struggles, it's a big decision coming up, because you do have a cost certain player there in Mrazek who's shown to be a solid starter in the past, who has had injury concerns. But depending on what happens with him the rest of the season, in terms of health and things like that, and then depending on how much Campbell does ask for in terms of both dollar amount and in terms of the term he gets, there's a lot of different factors going into what's going to be a massive decision this offseason.
Kyle, if Dubas gave you his GM hat to make the decision, what would you do?
It all comes down to how much money I got to give Jack Campbell, because I wouldn't feel comfortable committing more than something like $6 million to him. But if it's in that range that Frederik Andersen had been in years past, in the $5 million range for 4 to 5 years, that's where I'd be tempted to do it on the high side of things.
It's so funny. You answer that question so quickly. It's like you're ready to make Kyle Dubas's decision. I love it.
I don't envy him, because well, you can look back to a recent decision in Morgan Riley and extending him, which it's a long extension. It's a lot of money. It can go south quickly. And when you're already tight to the cap, there's not a lot of maneuverability. You got to make every dollar work. And Jack Campbell, with the limited sample he has, it can break great for you, or it can go really bad really quickly.
Awesome stuff, guys. All right, William Nylander, big 2 goals from Willie. Nylander, Matthews, Tavares, all with team leading 33 points this season so far. Nylander, obviously 15 goals, 18 assists. And if you're still a hater, we're going to ask you to take a seat. Okay, let's talk about his impact in the game against the Sens. Go ahead, guys.
He was absolutely unreal yesterday. I almost said yesterday, Saturday. He was just a pleasure to watch. He's been a pleasure to watch all season. This is just the William Nylander we've been seeing from day one of the season. He's been more or less the least most consistent player, not named Jack Campbell. And last night was no different. He had 2 great goals. Obviously, I think it was his second one, the one on the breakaway. Chef's kiss. Everything was great from his performance, and I can't wait to see more performances like this one, because if there's any more haters out there, and I imagine it's probably, I can count them on my 2 hands how many are left, they're gonna have to sit down for quite a while, because he's proving like every single day since December 1st, 2018, that he is worth every single penny.
Yeah, one thing I noticed going home for the holidays and talking with family again, is there I have a lot of family that aren't big fans of Nylander. They don't really like his style of play, but yeah, no, at this point they can't even be they can't deny how good he's been. Like, he hasn't really let up at all this season. There hasn't been a point where you see him just I mean, obviously he's not going to be working his ass off every shift, but like, he hasn't really had too many bad games anymore. And like, even in the preseason, we saw like how good he was out of the gate. And I think it's been very vindicating as a lifelong Nylander fan to see him finally get all the praise and appreciation that he deserves.
Yes.
But yeah, like I also really just like how funny his second goal was. I jokingly called it a drive-by, because he literally just like skated by and wired it. But yeah, no, I mean, it was never in doubt that he was going to play well against the Senators, because it's the Senators. But yeah, he's been, like Michael said, he's probably been their most consistent player aside from Jack Campbell this season.
Like, how do you not love him? Like, he's just so much fun to watch. And I've always loved watching him for his like effortless zone entries and things like that, and his underrated shot. And this year, it just feels like he's put everything together after a great playoffs. He's just continued that momentum into this year, and he's on pace now for something like 37, 38 goals. He's over a point per game so far this season. And he's been doing so with a bigger role this season. I think like a minute and a half more time on ice per game. He's back on power play 1. It's just, everything is looking up for William Nylander right now. He, like everybody said, he's been the most consistent forward this season. And if you went into this year and say William Nylander would be the most consistent forward, being active in the neutral zone, getting takeaways, things like that, it is exactly the year that you would have hoped from him.
I love it. I love it. I love that none of us are haters. And again, the haters that are just consistent for seasons now, they don't have a leg to stand on. So they don't have an argument. So it's just kind of like, it's a new year. They just got to get with the times, because Nylander's been great. And again, I agree with what Michael said. Since last year in the playoffs, Nylander's been the most consistent player. And I love to see it. I also think he's just super cool. Like, he's just got swag. So no hate from me. All right, let's move on to Ilya Mckev. Second game back this season, netted 2 goals on the night, and 2 big goals in my opinion, because he's a bottom 6 player that filled that depth role for the Leafs, which is freaking huge. When you have a team of superstars, to also have a team with depth and get those bottom 6 players to produce points, it's massive for the Leafs right now. It was just a really good game from Mckev, and everyone was happy with him.
Absolutely. Like, what's not to like about his performance? And, it's been a long time coming that he finally scored a breakaway goal. Shorthanded, no less, because that was one of the big jokes last season was that Ilya Mckev, like, whenever you go on a breakaway, you'd always know that nothing would happen to come from it. And
I remember I saw a tweet, I think it was from Oak Leafs, where he's like, it could be game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in overtime. And if Ilya Mckev is on a breakaway, I'd go and get popcorn from the kitchen.
Harsh.
Last year it was kind of right.
Yeah.
Okay, well
It
then,
was good.
what do we need to continue seeing from McKaev's game this season as obviously the season progresses?
Just performances like that. He looked like a confident player. Like as soon as he scored that shorthanded goal, I think it was like early in the first period, like he was a man on a mission throughout the entire night, getting chance after chance. Like he was driving plays, he was skating well. He looked like the player that we saw before his injury, like the back in December 2019. Like the recovery obviously has taken a long time. Last season was very difficult for him, and it took him quite a while to even get into the lineup this year. But yes, we only got 2 games to go off of from this season, but so far he's looked fantastic, and I can't wait to see him continue to keep this up, because a great Ilya Mckev is awesome for the Leafs, and it just improves their depth, which has been pretty solid so far this year.
Yeah.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Or yeah, I was just gonna add to that too. Like I think as like really the only thing Mckev needs to truly work on is his finishing ability. Because as we saw last season, he kind of struggled in that regards. But like he has the skill, he definitely has the speed. And I think even when he wasn't scoring, there was still value in his ability to literally take the puck and skate it to the other end of the ice at like on a breakaway and create a scoring chance out of it just purely by his skating ability. Obviously, not being able to score on any of them takes a bit of a hinder on that. But the ability to do that on its own is pretty valuable. And I can see why Dubas wanted to hang on to him even when he requested a trade for stuff like that. But yeah, if games like Saturday are an indication that like, you know, maybe his finishing ability is back a little bit, I'm not expecting him to light up the league, but you know, if he can chip in with a goal every 5 or 6 games, that'd be perfect.
No, that's exactly it. And like Michael mentioned there, it's been a couple of years since his wrist injury, starting the year with some confidence, getting a couple of goals here, which is his second game of the year because his first was the last game before the break. And so he comes back from injury, he plays 1 game, and then he has to take another 2.5 weeks or whatever it was off. But I really, really like the idea of the third line with David Kampf, Andre Kasha, how good they've been this year with Ilya Mckev with them, because we've seen it time and time again where Mckev and his skating ability is able to bring the puck up and transition from the defensive zone up into the offensive zone and create chances. We see it all the time on shorthanded, creating chances there. We see it all the time 5-on-5. And so with 2 guys who've already been doing that pretty well this season, having somebody who's basically a better Pierre Engvall, who's a little bit faster, who's a little bit better defensively, and has some better scoring ability in close and things like that. I'm really, really excited by that line because it's already been good this year. And I think they're going to be getting a lot of rush chances at a defensive zone starts, which even if they don't score on them, it's a lot better to have a defensive zone start that ends with a missed chance in the offensive zone than be hemorrhaging them in your own zone.
I think you guys touched upon one word that makes me really happy, and it's confidence. And I think confidence, even if you're a player who doesn't have the most talent, if you're confident in your abilities, you're going to make things happen. And when I was watching the All or Nothing docuseries, he seemed defeated. You know, there was a lot going on, a lot of adversity for him. And when I was watching, like, okay, I think he's kind of struggling with his confidence, but for him to come back and against Kyle, you alluded to this, the fact that he had his first game back. And then of course there's that NHL pause in the schedule for him to come back and have a game like that. It's got to be huge for his confidence. And going forward, you'd hope that he can only build on that. But that was such a big moment for him, and honestly can be such a turning point for a player. So like you guys are speaking to, it could be huge for the third line for the Leafs. Depth is huge. When you talk about a playoff team and a cup contender, you need, again, not only the Nylanders and the Tavareses and the Matthews and the Marners, you need these players in the bottom 6 to come and show up. So hopefully Ilya Mckev can just build on this game because it was really exciting to see him trending for the right reasons.
Yeah, and just finally on the confidence point, last year he didn't get his first goal until the 14th game of the season.
Oh, wow.
So getting 2 in the second game of the year, which is in a way kind of the first game of the year, literally the first game of the calendar year, has got to be really, really good for him in terms of getting the monkey off the back right away. Don't have to worry about anything like that. Feel good about your game coming back from injury, all these kind of things. because he's still around this team, even though he requested a trade over the offseason for a reason, because he's an important depth player for the Leafs. We saw that he's going to jump up potentially in the top 6 here this week. But even if he isn't, if he's on that third line, he's a play driver on the third line, who's also one of the most important penalty killers on this team.
Awesome. TJ Brody. Let's talk about another guy. 3-point night for the defenseman, 1 goal, 2 assists. And obviously the internet went wild for him. Scored against Edmonton on December 14th and also then scored against the Sens. So he brought a lot of star power to this game. And I like to see TJ Brody trending in the right direction in terms of offense. So let's break down his performance and moments that really stood out to you guys in his game against the Sens.
It's pretty obvious. Like who had him scoring backhanded on the wraparound? Like seriously, that was just absolutely amazing. Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. He had a heroic block that led to one of the first goals of the game. I think he had. I can't remember how he had scored his other goal. Just absolutely. I don't even think he scored though. But no, he had an absolutely unreal performance. Like he's the exact kind of defenseman the Leafs have needed for so long. We saw his value from last season, even though the offense didn't translate. And now we're finally seeing the offense translate, and he's still providing that same value. Like, what more could you ask for from TJ Brody? He doesn't need to be in the limelight to be effective, but when he is, he's awesome.
Well said.
I mean, we talk about like how great Morgan Rielly has been this season, and I think a lot of that has to like be credited to TJ Brody. Not that Riley's been relying on Brody, but just now Rielly isn't playing with Ron Hainsey or Matt Hunwick on the top pair. Yeah, giving someone who is capable of playing in the same minutes as Morgan Rielly means Morgan Rielly can be more of Morgan Rielly and less of the defensive anchor on that line, which that's not good if that's what you're using Morgan Rielly for. But yeah, no, just like as Michael touched on, just the offense as well. Like it was nice to see him finally get a few more points for it. Not like he's one of those guys that we're too concerned about how many points he gets in a season as long as he does his job. There is still like a lot of moments in the game. I think it was late in the first or in the second period where he like saved a goal with his stick or skate or something like that when there was a scramble in the crease. So I think it was a typical TJ performance and just a few more points add to it.
Fantasy hockey masterclass with the 2 shorthanded assists and then the wraparound goal. Like if anybody somehow had TJ Brody in your fantasy lineup, you're feeling good about that one. But no, it was great to see like the first goal, the Justin Hall goal, which is hilarious that he scored shorthanded as well. Started because of a TJ Brody 2-on-1 play where he makes a diving play, gets the puck in the corner. Eventually the puck goes back the other way and they score. And that's exactly the value that he brings to the game. If you're getting any kind of offense from him, it's just an added bonus. So like Scott was mentioned, the biggest value that TJ Brody has had is that his defensive game has freed up Morgan Rielly to be Morgan Rielly. But when you get games like this one where Brody does activate offensively, he gets down low in the cycle rotation when the Leafs are in the zone and he gets a wraparound goal, like you'll take him. And so for TJ Brody, the offense, he's an effective player, whether he scores 0 goals or whether he scores 10 goals on the season. But you'll gladly take these 3-point games when you get them.
Kyle, you mentioned the name Justin Hall. Scott, your favorite player this season. I hope people can hear my sarcasm. How'd you feel in that moment?
I mean, like, I feel like I should reiterate here. Like, it's not that I don't hate him. He's just he's definitely been the weakest link on this team, and it's not even his fault. It's mostly just because Jake Muzzin has been human this season. So now Hall is a little bit more out of his element and that shutdown pair role. But I was perfectly fine with his performance on Saturday, even like ignoring the goal as well. Like he was just solid defensively. I didn't notice anything too crazy from him. And that was even with Muzzin out of the lineup completely. Who was it? Was it Travis Dermott that was his partner in the top pair, I want to say? Or was it Sandy? Okay, yeah. So, well, either or. One of those two, like, they're perfectly capable in that role as well. So it was nice to see him not be, like, drowning out there without Muzzin in that role. So, again, you have to take it with a grain of salt because it's the Ottawa Senators. But hopefully Justin Hall has said new year, new me, and has gone back to his old ways of being a shutdown defenseman.
Love it. Love it. All right. Anything else you guys want to say about the game against the Sens? Any other notable moments, notable players?
We should. I'll just quickly touch on the power play. Like at the start of the game, I was extremely concerned with how they were playing because they looked very sloppy. They looked pretty rusty. But as the game went on, obviously they got a lot of chances. Maybe because the refs made some questionable calls, or maybe because just being generous. But I think if the Leafs power play continues to play like they did towards the latter half of the game, they shouldn't have any concerns. But it'll be interesting to see how they utilize Mitch Marner because the broadcast kept going on and on about, Mitch Marner has not scored a power play goal in a very long time. Do you guys know that? It's crazy, right?
Also, I'm a little bit concerned that Austin Matthews hasn't scored a goal all year.
There it is.
What a
I love
bust.
it. You know, people out there are saying it, which is crazy. Whatever anyone can say about the Leafs, they will. All right. Next game for the Leafs against the Oilers on Wednesday. For obvious reasons, I love this matchup. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. But the last time the Leafs played the Oilers, it was a big 5-1 win for the boys. So we'll see how they do in Leafs land. Maybe one thing we can say about that game, and one thing maybe the Leafs can improve upon to keep their momentum going against the Oilers.
This screams a potential loss for me because the Oilers, as I'm sure you know, have been struggling a lot the last few weeks. I think they had a couple tough losses, pretty forced performances. And as the saying goes in Leafland, if your opponent is struggling or if a particular player hasn't scored in a while, just play against the Leafs and all your problems will be fixed. So.
Well, you know what? Right, you're exactly right, Michael. The Oilers have lost back-to-back games to the two worst teams in the Metro Division. Now they're taking on the Rangers tonight, so we'll see if they can bounce back today. But they have not been trending, to say the least, in the right direction. What I will say about the Oilers is they have the slowest start that I've ever seen. So if the Leafs can come out buzzing, it'll be a good chance for the Leafs to get a few goals. But well, you never know. I do feel that way about the Leafs. You play the worst team or a team that's not doing well, and it ends up being an L. So we'll see. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
I'm just really surprised that a team with a blue line of Darnell Nurse, Tyson Barrie, Duncan Keith, and Cody Ceci is struggling. Honestly, would not have seen that coming. Imagine looking at the worst Leafs team of the Matthews era and looking at the two worst defensemen on that team and being like, I want those guys.
Honest. I'm going to just like keep my mouth shut because I'm in this weird position of like doing Leafs like podcasts and then also doing Oilers pre-games. But all I will say is when people are like, what is happening? I'm like, with Tyson Barrie, why did CC do that? I'm like, thanks for picking them out from the Leafs. I don't know, but good luck. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. I've learned that lesson. Keep it shut and enjoy the games.
If only they had a young, cost-controlled right-handed defenseman last year that they could have kept and instead decided to trade for Warren Fogle.
Honest to God,
don't even
get me started on that. Started on that. Oh my God, my face is burning.
McDavid's gonna pot 5 on us this week now.
You never know.
Yeah.
I feel like Morgan Riley has PTSD every time.
Oh, absolutely.
He has to. Hey, he has to every time be like, it can't happen again. It can't happen again. We'll see. Okay, quickly before we wrap this up, the AHL in discussion or in hopes that they can attend the Olympics. Kyle, maybe you can speak to this. Josh Hosang might have an opportunity to represent his country in Beijing. However, there's an article that Nick Barden put out today saying that he has a quote unquote complicated relationship with Hockey Canada. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit and what Josh Hosang could potentially bring to this Olympic team if selected, if he can go.
Yeah, so last time in 2018, AHL players were able to go because they're not under NHL contract. That's kind of the way that it's worked. Depends to be seen whether the AHL will allow their players to go over and things like that. But assuming that is the case, it's not just anybody in the AHL. They have to be signed to an AHL contract and not to an NHL contract. So, for example, with the Leafs, Christian Rubens, who was named to the Latvian team back in September or whatever it was, can't go because he's on an NHL contract, but Josh Hosang, because he's on an AHL contract, can go. Whether he gets picked remains to be seen, but he's a mid-20s, fast, versatile forward that can give you some offensive pop and run a power play, which when you're looking at players that are either playing in Europe or playing in the AHL, is something that you don't have a lot to pick from. But like Nick in his article mentions, it's not exactly been the best relationship between Hosang and Hockey Canada. And that's one of the things that has really kind of started the kind of perception around him in the hockey world as a young prospect. He was left off of World Junior teams younger because of perceived defensive problems and things like that, even though he was one of the best offensive players in the OHL at the time during his 18, 19-year-old seasons, where he could have played for Canada at the World Juniors in a couple of years where they probably could have used a little bit of extra offense as well. And he was pretty vocal back in 2014 about being left off of those teams. So I would recommend checking out Nick's article to go a little bit more in depth on it, but they've had a complicated relationship in the past. But it would be really, really cool to see them rectify it and see Hosang on the Olympic team, because he would be a great fit in a top six there for a team that probably needs some electric offense that doesn't have a lot to pick from.
Oh, perfectly said. Again, yeah, check out Nick Barden's article on the Leafsnation.com, but what a story that would be for Josh Hosang. And I'm really rooting for this guy because he, like you said, he had kind of like a difficult journey in the beginning of his career, and everyone can turn it around. It's 2022. It's a new year. Hopefully that they can, find a nice middle point between Hockey Canada and Josh Hosang and start developing a new relationship, because I think it'd be incredible for Josh Hosang to have that opportunity and show everyone what he can do, because he's been doing very, very well with the Marlies.
Yeah, and he scored another goal this past weekend to start the year off right as well. So he's been playing really, really well. He's a unique case where he's a mid-20s player that isn't on an AHL contract that could go over and is eligible to play depending on what the AHL decides. I know a lot of people would love to see it. And the Marlies actually have a couple other players that could be candidates to play for the Olympics as well, in Finland's Antti Suomela and Germany's Mark Michaelis as well. So if AHL players do go over, we could see as many as 3 different Marlies over there in February.
Awesome. Anything else, boys? Anything we want to touch upon before we quickly riff off our song of the week? Michael, I don't know if you've you know this, but each week we give a song that we're going to put on a year-end playlist at the end of the regular season to get Leafs fans excited for the playoffs. Now, these songs are very
It's all
over the place.
Yeah.
There's Christmas specials, there's workout bangers, there's depressing songs. It's all over the place. So there's no criteria. It's just the song of the week that you want to add to the playlist that's going to get a Leafs fan through the day. If it's a good one, a bad one, a sad one, a happy one, whatever it is, it's going to be quite the diverse playlist. So I'll start off, and this is a song that you guys might not know. So I love this song. I love Post Malone, and I think we talked about this last week, if I remember correctly. There's a song called Trust Me, and I think it has Post Malone undertones to it, but it's kind of like this weird cover, and it's by HELLSTRVCK, Hellstruck. I don't know, but it's really, really, really good. And Mike and I listen to it all the time. And it's one of those songs that never gets old for me. So I've been listening to this one a lot lately, and it's like and it's kind of slow, but there's like techno undertones to it. So that's my song of the week. And whoever wants to go next, go ahead.
I have a good one that I've been listening to quite recently. It's an old Charlie Puth song called "The Way I Am." It's I think the chorus just goes perfectly, because like you could talk about this with pretty much any Leaf, or just like in general with how you view life. Tell everyone that you could either hate me or love me, but that's just the way I am. It's a good mindset to have throughout life. Just like be confident in who you are. Don't let anyone get you down. I think it's always a good mindset, not just these Leafs, who I think there's still some people that are questioning them or doubting them, but hey, some confidence can go a long way.
Michael, with our freaking inspo, honest to God, I love that, because confidence is everything. Sometimes I struggle with that, and my fiance Mike will be like, dude, you just need to have confidence. I'm like, it's just not so easy. But I think that's great advice, and that's a great song to listen to. So I'm actually going to probably play this one after our Oilers pregame show.
Scott, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Lately, the song I've been listening to a lot right now, it part of the reason was like it also just ended up really rising up my year-end songs list. Near the end of the year, it was kind of a surprise candidate that I hadn't listened to too much for most of the year. It's a song called Anxious by The Wildlife, except there's no eyes in wildlife, so it's Wildlife.
Oh, I think I've heard of this. Hold on, let me write this down though. But you can continue.
It like basically it's about just being anxious about people not communicating through like messaging, like online stuff like that. So it's very fitting considering the announcements today in Ontario. But also just the whole concept of anxiety in general works very well as a Leafs fan.
Oh, we know anxiety, don't we?
Mm.
Well, the Leafs got a shutout to start off the year, so let's keep with that theme and go with 0 by the Smashing Pumpkins. Just a nice little fit there in terms of the result over the weekend, but also a really damn good song.
I love it. All right, guys. Okay, I'll talk to you guys offline about this. Okay, everyone, this has been episode 17 of the Leafsnation Radio podcast. Always a pleasure. Leafs are playing on Wednesday against the Edmonton Oilers, and we will be back next Monday with another recap and talking about everything that's going on in the NHL. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode.